Hello everybody! This video is the second part of my story about Jaguar X-type intake manifold repairs. Here I show you how I took apart the block of injectors, removed them one by one to be tested using special equipment, repinned fuel injector connectors, checked and refurbished their pins, installed the injectors back again to where they belong, and assembled the lower part of the intake manifold to be mounted on the engine. As I have already told you, the process of installing the intake manifold and changing the inlet gaskets is available in the first part of this video. As usual, I'll give you the link to it in the description below. So let's begin. First of all, I unplugged the connectors of a fuel injector harness and broke free 5 8mm bolts retaining common rail using my L-shaped 8mm wrench and an 8mm socket. After that, I removed these 5 bolts and disassembled the block of injectors. I was making these repairs the next day after my intake manifold removal, so there was no fuel pressure in a common rail. Otherwise, I would take measures and depressurize the fuel system before removing injectors from the common rail. To tell you the truth, the lower manifold fell into parts as soon as the bolts retaining common rail were removed. So I even didn't catch this moment to film it. I put aside the wiring harness and started getting the injectors out of the intake manifold. Some of them popped out without any problems, the others could be taken out only after dropping some motor oil on their O-rings. The same I did with the other bank injectors, the process is much the same. I've just taken a picture of a 2.1 engine injector OEM number and give it to you here on the screen and in the description below the video. Once I had the injector harness in my hands, I thought it was a good idea to repin and tighten the pins of connectors. Moreover, when checking the engine fault codes, once I found a fault code of an injector open circuit. First of all, I bent the middle tab aside with a jeweler's screwdriver and pried up the red wedge lock out of the connector. I even broke a piece of the wedge lock with a white screwdriver. I pried it from the wrong side. It was better do it on the opposite side, as I did when removing the lock completely from the connector. You see, the lock has got 2 tabs, one big and the other small on the opposite side. It was the big one that required a lot of efforts to be removed and caused the majority of issues. After that, I bent aside the plastic tabs inside the connector, at the same time pulling the wires down. The pins were removed. I gripped them with pliers and tightened the clips of the pins with a needle through the side hole. I tried the pins on the injector male pins. They were sitting tightly. After that, I went on inserting the pins into the connector body, paying attention on the polarity. It was not a problem at all, since the next connector also had the same 2 wires, green and red, coming from it, and I used it as a pattern. I inserted the wedging lock into the plug until it clicked. The same I did to all the remaining injector connectors. Since I had the whole intake disassembled, I found it reasonable to take the injectors for testing to be on the safe side. I took the injectors to the nearest technician and had them tested. All the 6 injectors were working perfectly without any leakage. What a pity, I was so happy I forgot to film the process of testing my injectors and turned the camera on when everything was over, so there was nothing to do but just film the equipment with my injectors inserted into it. After that, I went on assembling the block of injectors. I poured some engine oil into the oil can cap and started greasing the O-rings with my finger. I inserted the injectors into the plastic lower manifold part. By the way, both these black parts are the same and can be swapped for each other. I inserted the upper end of injectors into the common rail and fixed the assembly with 8mm bolts. The previous evening I had cleaned all the parts with rags and some gas, so they looked much better than when they were removed from the car. The process of cleaning is not of much interest to you, so I have omitted it. After that, I installed the guiding clips on the injectors. These clips don't retain anything, as one could think at a first glance. They just prevent the injectors from turning around and make them sit in correct position. I repeated the same process for the other bank injectors. You can see it from a different point of view. I like the V6 engine because when assembling it you have to do everything twice for bank 1 and bank 2. You are getting trained and skilled, for it has been known since ancient times, repetitio est mater studiorum. So I inserted the second bank injectors into the common rail and secured it with 8mm bolts. The guiding clips also were installed without any issues. Here I made a mistake. I had to put the wiring harness between the manifold parts before I secured them with 8mm bolts. It would make the process of plugging the connectors in much easier. But I am fond of experiments, so I threaded the wiring into place and plugged it in. First the 3 black connectors, after that the 3 white ones. The block of injectors is ready for mounting on the engine. You can see the process of installation in the first part of this video. The link to it will be on the screen and in the description below.
Haven't you given me a thumb up yet? It's a good time to do it now.